Hello, everyone. Yeah, you can, all of you, take a seat. So that we can start. First of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the EPC, to this policy dialogue titled Serbia 1 year into the student-led protests, where to next and what role for the EU. As you all know, 1st of November, this Saturday, marked 1 year since the start of the protest last year, triggered by the collapse of part of the Novi Sad train station. The tragedy triggered a wave of protests that has been considered the largest in Serbia's recent history. Over the past 12 months, Serbia's deep political crisis has intensified, and the legitimacy of the regime has been put into question in repeated occasions. The demonstrations have been met with heightened repression and aggressive smear campaigns, targeting protesters, civil society, NGOs, and independent journalists as recognized by different bodies, including the UN. To take stock of the developments in Serbia and the EU's response over the past year, and to explore what future for Serbia's democracy and EU path, I am joined today by 3, but it will become 4 outstanding speakers. First, Raša Nedeljkov, Program Director of the Center for Research, Transparency and Accountability, better known as CRTA. Nikola Burazer, he's the Program Director of the Center for Contemporary Politics and a BiEPAG member. And on my right, Tonino Picula, a member of the European Parliament for the Socialist and Democrat Group and Rapporteur for Serbia. We were also supposed to be joined, and we are hopefully going to be joined at some point by Jelena Vasiljević, who is a Senior Research Associate at the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory at the University of Belgrade, and also a BiEPAG member. She was she couldn't make it to Brussels because of the drones issue last night. I guess that many of you have seen the news, but she is on her way, so hopefully she is going to be able to join us for the second half of the event. I think it's a very timely event, not only because of the first anniversary of the start of the protests last Saturday, but also because of the recent yesterday publication of the enlargement package by the European Commission, which includes Serbia's progress reports, which we are going to also assess and analyze later. And also because recently the Parliament also issued a motion for a resolution that we are going to explore later as well. First of all, we are going to start with Raša presenting the results of an opinion poll that was carried out by CRTA and that they published, I think, like recently. I don't know if last week or 2 weeks ago, but recently. What? Last week. We are going to start with him. Then we are going to open the floor for the panel, and then at the end, as always, we are going to open the floor for a Q&A for questions from the audience. So I encourage you to think of your questions and to pose your questions to the speakers when the time comes. Having said that, Raša, the floor is yours.
Okay, so once again, thank you very much for coming. My name is Raša Nedeljkov, and I would be presenting data. CRTA is trying for years to advocate for democracy in Serbia, for stronger institutions, for more division between the branches of the government by facts. We are an organization that has been attacked from all political actors in Serbia. One side would be claiming that we are opposition. Sometimes opposition will be claiming that we are in the pockets of the government. So it means that in average, I believe that we are defending the true role of civil society to be a critical voice, especially when we are advocating for advancements, and those advancements of democracy are not easy. So for us to be able to advocate with straight spine and being vocal, we rely on facts. And these facts are now related in the latest public opinion poll done in the second half of September. It's being done by the phone, and it's a biggish sample of more than 2,000 people being polled for most important political issues in Serbia. There are a lot of slides. I will be running through them, but I would be more than open to answer on some specifics if you have. This is one of the biggest and most important questions in public opinion polls that indirectly is showing in what state of play one government is. And as you can see here, more than every second citizen believes that Serbia is going in the wrong direction. When we look into the trends, you will see that in a moment, in the middle of the graph, there is a December 24 public opinion poll also done by CRTA. When the canopy collapsed, in that moment we had more than 50% again people saying that Serbia is going in the wrong direction. 1 year after, we are on the same position. It means that we have a long period of time when the citizens are believing or are feeling that things are not going right. We used to have around the beginning of this year a burst of positivity which was brought by youth, which was brought by maybe also by naivety. I would say that some things can be corrected or changed quickly. On the 15th of March, there was a huge, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, gathering of Serbian citizens, peaceful gathering in support for the requests of the students, which were the rule of law, transparency, and given that after that event there were no changes that were by the part of the society expected, we again see that the direction in which country is going is wrong. This is by the researchers seen as important predictor of possibility of the change of the regimes. We used to have the similar situations over the longer period of time on this same question, if being responded that the majority of citizens are thinking the country is going in the wrong direction. We saw the change in Montenegro, we saw a change in North Macedonia. So this is why pollsters, especially experienced pollsters in Serbia, are asking it for decades in Serbia, and here is how it's right now. When we ask Serbian citizens what are the most important issues and problems that Serbia is facing, so these are not the personal issues, these are the issues that Serbia is facing, you will see that the corruption is the #1 issue. You will see that, like many internationals are asking us, okay, where is the Kosovo here? Well, Kosovo couldn't fit here because it's on the 21st place. It's only 3% citizens who are saying that Kosovo is the #1 question, #1 issue for them. When we look at about the trends and we group the issues, there are 4 most dominating issues for Serbia. So the #1 throughout the year is corruption, and it's the dominant #1 issue. The second one is parties in power or Aleksandar Vučić as the president. And you can see here on the graph, it's the red line, that since February 2025, this issue raised. So in the middle of the year, it was 18%, and we now see it on the 23%. We are reading this in parallel to the decrease a little bit of the selecting corruption as the #1 issue, because citizens are understanding that the government, that the regime, that the institutions, that Aleksandar Vučić, who is personification of captured institutions, is responsible for the state systemic corruption. So in total, these 2 issues are the dominant. Of course, there is a group of economy issues, bread and butter issues that are bothering Serbian citizen economy. And on the 4th place is issue around students or blockaders. The dominant narrative in our mainstream media, pro-government media, is for months pumping, if I could say, the issue of blockaders. And when we go in cross-tabulation, of course, that those people who are supporting the government are saying that the biggest problem in Serbia are students. But for everybody else, those who are supporting students or opposition parties, or even for those who are undecided, dominantly the #1 issue is corruption. I mentioned protests, and here you can see that still there is a vast majority of Serbian citizens who are supporting student protests by far. When we see the trends, you will basically see that there is no significant change when it comes to the support to the protests. This is significant because students are, as I mentioned, under heavy propaganda, negative propaganda on a daily basis, but still a vast majority of citizens are recognizing reasons for why students stood up as a solid and the one to support them. We also asked the Serbian citizens to, we were trying to test the propaganda machinery, and there are two dominating narratives. The one that students and protests are there because of the outrage, because of the death of the 16 people due to the corruption and negligence of the state. And the other one was that the protests are organized by somebody abroad, somebody against the state. And you can see clearly here that Serbian citizens are recognizing that what are the true reasons despite the heavy propaganda. By the way, when it comes to the propaganda, in the past year, we counted more than 9,000 media pieces. In most influential online media portals that are mentioning phrase a colored revolution. So in average, it's more than 30 per day. Articles are dictating this kind of a narrative. Despite that, you can see here that Serbian citizens are seeing that the reason for a students' fight is something which is genuine, that feel, and when we go back to the problem of corruption, it's something which citizens are recognizing as the top one. We analyzed also in different ways how, what is the performance of the government. You can clearly see here that, again, majority of citizens are claiming that they don't see that the performance of the government or Aleksandar Vučić is good. And what we are also seeing is that there is a deep polarization in the society. However, for those who are against the current ruling political parties and for those who are supporting students, it is something which is also important to understand that they don't care who will come to power. So 43% of citizens are saying, I don't care, it doesn't matter who takes the power as long as current regime is out. On the other hand, we are seeing a drop in people who are supporting the statement that Vučić is guarantor of peace and stability, which was it used to be a bigger number. It is also one of the predictors that people are more open for changes, despite the fact that they are not that clear who might be replacing it, because it's not clear who, what is the structure of the students, who will be the candidates, who will be forming potential government, etc. People basically said, I don't care as far as this is being changed. Also, important finding from this, one of the most important political question is that Serbian citizens are seeking solution for the current political crisis through elections. Here is also not only relevant for those who are voting against the political leadership right now, but also 30% of ruling party supporters are asking for snap elections. And that's something which we can discuss on why the country that had in past 10 years out of 5 national elections for parliament, 4 were snap, 4 were early elections. Why now, where majority of citizens are asking elections, we don't have them called? And of course, here we can see that by the way, this cross-tabulation in demographics, in education, in media consumption, in the support for protests or the ruling parties is something which is consistent with different different questions. Those people who are for the elections are dominantly those who are educated people, dominantly those who are informing themselves from media that are critical towards the government, but also those who are dominantly informing them from the social media. We are seeing in the past months those people who are neither for the government, neither for the opposition, now more and more they are taking stances as same those people who are supporting students. We asked who would you vote in elections for the parliament. And you can see here clearly that students' list has significant advantage. Of course, this must be read with, how would you say, pinch of salt, if that's the term. Well, it's because we're speaking about the hypothetical elections. Elections are not being called. We don't know, the public doesn't know who is on the student list. We don't know who will be the main leaders for that list. We don't know how the opposition would be running these elections, if they would be running elections together, individual in different groups. But when being confronted with the question if there is a student list and if there is a ruling coalition joint list, it's clear that currently students are getting substantive support more than and this is something which happens basically for the first time in a year of polling political questions after the changes in political spectrum in Serbia. Another important indicator that shows to us that there is a significant change in motivation, and that's the key change that students brought to Serbian citizens, is confidence of vote. So far, ruling political parties traditionally has high confidence of vote. So people who are supporting ruling parties, they would be more certainly go out and vote, while usually the certainty of the vote among the opposition parties is below 50%. Usually it's around 30%. Around elections, it's 50%. Now we can see that those people who are saying that they would support student list, their certainty of the vote is almost the same as for the government. And this is something which definitely is another indicator, indirect indicator of a completely different paradigm in political life in Serbia. When it comes to foreign policy, there is nothing new. There are still 50-50 chances, despite all of the negative propaganda against the EU by the pro-government media, captured media, and including from the public officials. We have the still 50-50 chances among those who are decided. You will see that in April there was one spike in support for the EU among those who are decided. It happened not because of any of the high-level officials visited Serbia, not because high-level officials visited Brussels, but because of the biggest drivers in Serbian politics. Actually, the first institutions that they visited was not in Serbia, it was in Strasbourg. So it was students cycling to Strasbourg, and it was announced that students will be running towards the Brussels in that period of time for the first time in really, really long time, because we have this question being asked for the past couple of years. The trends are always around 50% among those who are decided. The only time that we had a significant change was when the students were cycling, and that can be also telling, and some of the indicators where we could be finding more support for the EU in Serbia. For us, it's important to be understood that those voters who are supporting ruling political parties are dominantly not voting for the membership in the EU. The pool of people who are supporters for the EU are among those who are with the standing by the students. And of course, I'm calling you to look at how are voting those who are following information from the pro-government or the critical media. It's important to mention that pro-government media is a huge chunk of the media space. It's basically all national TV stations, all most influential dailies, all online portals are basically pro-government, and people who are following those media are not in line with joining majority EU. But on the other hand, those who are following critical media, which are basically 2 cable TV stations available to maximum 25% of Serbian citizens, those people are saying that we need to be part of the EU. This is important historical question that has been asked by pollsters since 2000. First 4 years, 2000, 2003, 2015, and 22 is being asked by Ipsos. In 2025 is being asked by CRTA. It is, what is the best way for Serbia to protect its national interests? For us, it's important to indicate that we have a rise on the right part of the here you can see that there is a rise of those who are saying non-alliance or to be good with all of those on the left, on the right, so to be neutral. When you compare, for example, in the beginning of 2000s, it was only 17%. You will see that also there is a huge drop since 2003 for this question, and now membership in the EU is equal as alliance with Russia and China. But we also wanted to show you, when you cross-tab answers on this question with political affiliation, only 5% of those people who are supporting ruling political parties are saying that membership in the EU is a strategic interest for Serbia. Whereas those same voters are saying that alliance with Russia and China is. On the other hand, those who are supporting student lists, they are saying that membership in EU is the best way to protect Serbian interests, and only 9% of them are saying that it's alliance with Russia and Serbia. And this is actually clear evidence that propaganda, government propaganda, is trying to portray students as ultra-nationalists, far-right, pro-Russian. And of course, yes, there are people among their ranks who are extremely vocal, and they are not in line with a membership with the EU, and who have the ultra-right or ultra-left opinions. But majority of people who are supporting student lists are the pool of people who are the base of support for the Serbia, and it's even clear from this question. I just wanted clearly to run through, if you allow me, Berta, for a couple of more minutes, just to show you in what circumstances Serbian citizens are still choosing basically an option to join the EU, despite the heavy propaganda that they're being faced with. Alexander Vučić, until this day, I think the beginning of basically November, had 333 live addresses on national TV stations. In average, more than 30 minutes. In March, he had 61 live address. There was a day that he had 9 addresses during one day. Alexander Vučić is the only institution in Serbia. He's the only voice of any kind of reading of reality in Serbia. And this is what Serbian citizens who are on the streets are trying to fight. It's not a personal fight, it's a fight for the institutions. People in Serbia want institutions that are defending public interest, not the narrow private political interest. ODIHR in 2023 elections made a key finding that the line between the state and the party is deleted. So this is something which Serbian citizens see, that every problem they have, the only way that they can solve it is through clientelism, through some transactions with the government, and that's the way the system, they don't see it as a function, they want to change it. We are following also media pieces that are mentioning key international foreign actors in Serbia, Russia, China, EU and member states, US and NATO. You can see here on this slide who is the #1 quoted in those articles mentioning these 5 entities that I mentioned. Obviously, it's the influence and appearance in media that clearly shows that President Vučić is the #1 source. And here is how he is being quoted. Top 3 quotations of President Vučić is in a neutral tone. So neutral about Russia, neutral about US, and neutral about EU. But when Aleksandar Vučić is quoted in bias, non-professional media pieces, #1 is positive for Russia. #2 is positive for China. #3 is positive for US. And when you deep dive, it's not positive for the US as much as it's positive to President Trump. Then goes neutral about China, and then comes negative about the EU. And you will see here on this chart, the only half of that is positive for European Union. And that is the leader, to go back on this slide, that is most influential in political leader in Serbia, claiming that the #1 political goal for Serbia is joining the EU. Yet when he is quoted, and by the way, media landscape I mentioned in Serbia is quite distorted. Media that are quoting President Vučić are under his direct control or indirect control. Pluralism in these media is basically 95% of all political actors in central news on 5 national TV stations are coming from the ruling political parties, 95%. Aleksandar Vučić is 60% in total. So more than every second face that people are seeing in news is his face. And this is how he is steering the emotions towards the Russia, China, or EU. Clearly, that leadership of Serbia is one story telling to Serbian citizens and completely different when they come to Brussels or other European capitals. When it comes to information manipulation, you can call it FIMI, you can call it disinformation or misinformation. #1 target of these smear campaigns in Serbian media, again, controlled by pro-government forces, is against the EU, and on the second place, pro-Russia. And I think this is the last slide. I wanted just to show here how this media is biased, how this media is unprofessional, and how this media is working for one unique goal. These are several situations in Serbia that resulted in peak in positive reporting or just reporting about the 5 entities. You can see here that there is a peak here for positive reporting about Russia. What happened there? Vučić met with President Putin. There is a spike in positive reporting to China, this red one, Vučić visiting China. Positive, huge, the biggest peak here about Russia. What happened in this day? It was when President Vučić went to Moscow. Then we also have President of Commission Ursula von der Leyen visiting Belgrade here and the year before. Basically, there is no peak. So there is a difference in how media is treating important events, political events, like visiting of President of Commission to Belgrade. It's not resulting in positive reporting. And again, the only positive emotions when we succeeded to measure was the moment when students were basically trying to draw attention of European institutions to stand by Serbian people. And that's what I'm trying also to convey this message as well. Serbian people will be the one who will be joining or not joining the EU. It will not be the political parties. It will be the regime, current or next future. That's why we need to find ways on how Serbian citizens start building trust in European institutions and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raša, for this very comprehensive unpacking or analysis of the results of the opinion poll. We could really spend hours just at every slide, like from you started speaking about the main concerns of Serbian citizens, then their opinions towards the review towards like calling for elections, the current regime, then views towards the EU, and now this very comprehensive analysis of the media landscape in Serbia and how do they report on that. I will now I will start by asking Nikola, what is your reading of the results? Like, how do you see it? Maybe especially when it comes to the potential call for elections, whether you see this as a possibility. Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you, Raša, for the great presentation. Now, of course, the situation in Serbia is quite complex. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And having in mind the previous experience of having early elections basically every year or every other year, it wouldn't be a surprise to see, new elections, before their due date, which is in late 2027. But whether that will happen or not will largely depend on the calculation of the government. So whether they believe that they have an edge at a certain point, or maybe they would prefer to leave the elections until later date. And of course, the pressure under which the government is from the citizens, from the students, the opposition, and of course, the European Union and other international actors. Whether this pressure will actually bear fruit in that sense, it's really hard to predict. But when it comes to the calculation of the government, I believe that the main calculation the government actually has is whether it will actually be threatened in elections, having in mind the complexity of the other side, in this struggle. So you have right now definitely a drop in support towards the government, and you have strengthening of support towards the student list, but you do not really know yet who will be on the list and how it will affect the popularity of this list, and also what will be the relationship between the student list and opposition parties. Of course, not only pro-European opposition parties, which are in a way invited to somehow not take part in the elections and support the student list, but also the right-wing opposition and many fake opposition parties, which are probably about to announce taking part in these elections and making things much more complicated. So his calculation, I would say, largely depends on whether there will be a unified front in Serbia, the opposition front. Now, whether it comes in the form of one single list, everybody will support, or maybe several lists, but there has to be one unified front, or at least some kind of a picture of who the opposition lists actually are. And this is something which we are far away from currently. And I believe this is the main concern, the government, on the main calculation which they have. And of course, while this is all happening, they're trying to somehow improve the situation through a combination of, let's say, violence and appeasement. So they're shifting. Sometimes even in a matter of a couple of weeks, they're changing their approach. Sometimes even a couple of days, they're changing their approach. So they are trying to somehow violently shut down the protests. They're trying to show the might of the state. And then after it backfires, after it provokes even more protests, then basically you can see that they're trying to somehow keep the tensions down. Like we have literally seen only 5 days ago, President Vučić apologizing for everything he said negatively about the students, and in a way promising some kind of a new phase where there'll be dialogue, where there'll be now a more peaceful phase in the resolution of this crisis. But then only 1 day later, you see all these incidents happening in Belgrade, in Čačiland, with provocations towards a mother who lost her child, during the canopy fall, which is really, really diabolical in a way, and which of course provokes now more tensions and more mobilization. So it's really hard to predict of what the government will do about this. They're simply shifting strategies every other week or every other day, like sometimes really confusingly of, why are they doing some things and what they're trying to achieve with it. To give some kind of an overall comment about the protests. So, as you rightfully said, these are by far the most serious protests at the time of Aleksandar Vučić, and by far the most serious challenge to his government in the last 13 years. But the reasons why we have such strong protests are not only in the tragedy itself and the resulting behavior of the government, which is actually quite important, maybe even more important than the tragedy itself, because the first emotion was grief. It wasn't anger, it wasn't a desire to go and topple the government, but that the government made a lot of mistakes that actually fed the protests, make them grow. But actually talking about the destruction of democratic institutions, which is now a long-term problem in Serbia, which they have been deteriorating for years now. We're talking about unfair election, we're talking about the collapse of media freedom, we're talking about high levels of corruption, almost complete impunity of the government when it comes to corruption, and all of that has made made these protests actually, arise so quickly and lead to such a mass mobilization. And the most important two consequences of the protests is, on the one hand, the mass mobilization of the citizens against the government, thanks to the students, of course, with their activities, the protests, but also their walks all around Serbia. They have really done wonders to mobilize the population actually in defense of democracy and rule of law and against the government. And the other major consequence is the increase of authoritarian behavior by the government. So you have these two processes happening simultaneously in the past year, sometimes feeding each other, right? So after 1 year of the protest, you now, on the one hand, see hope in the terms of this mobilization, which shows that the government cannot really continue behaving the way it did and keep staying in power. I think that is clear. But on the other hand, there is a very clear authoritarian tendency with increasing authoritarian government behavior, and I would say a really large danger of large-scale violence happening. So in this past year, we saw many violent incidents. Thankfully, nobody died in all these incidents, but the crisis is not over yet. More is yet to come. So in a way, we are at the crossroads. Democracy in Serbia is at the crossroads. There are reasons for optimism, but there are also reasons for caution and basically to signal a warning that the crisis is far from over, and there is a very real chance that it might go downhill from here.
Thank you, Nikola. The EU has been accused, or many have considered that the EU response to the situation in Serbia has been too timid, has not responded strongly enough. Recently, the Parliament issued a motion for a resolution that was quite strong in its terms. Like I'm quoting, the resolution condemned in the strongest terms the wave of state-influenced violence and holds the Serbian leadership politically responsible for escalating repression, normalizing violence, and weakening democratic institutions. From your point of view, from the Parliament, maybe if you can speak a little bit about this resolution, and how do you assess the response of the EU so far to the situation in Serbia? Over to you, Tonino.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you, EPC, for an invitation. I would like to thank everybody for coming, and of course I would like to thank colleagues from the CRTA for their effort and dedicated work to extract all this information and the data which can help us to, let's say, depict the state of play in the Serbia. Regarding European Parliament, of course, if I want to make a bit of joke, of course, I'm a standing rapporteur for the Serbia on behalf of the European Parliament, but I'm colored revolutionary on behalf of the European Union, because it's the very common expression regime in Belgrade are trying to put us on this map, or to show that we are in a way some kind of the hostile institution to the government and powers in the Belgrade. So it's basically very hard to describe and to set a course toward the one regime who is openly committed to European Union membership, and there is a let alone a date, of course, before the end of 2026, government in Belgrade declared that it will be ready to finish accession negotiation, but on the daily basis, like we saw here during this presentation, European Union as the main goal of the policy is under the severe pressure and insulted from the media sponsored by the government. So, of course, it's some level of hypocrisy here we need to take into account. But on the other hand, our job is to take a stock very seriously about reachable data and put all data into the structure we are assess any other country in the region, any candidate country in the region. And yesterday, Commissioner Marta Kos for enlargement, of course, presented this year report on number of the countries knocking on the European Union doors. Among them was Serbia, in a way, and we all could see, in a way, certain shifts in Commission's narrative and opinion on the Serbia. For the first time, after being Commissioner for Enlargement, Mr. Varhelyi, I think now we got a different points of view coming from the Commission. Regarding European Parliament, I can say that we are consistent. Our data-based and value-oriented analysis were on the table for many years. And the last example you mentioned was our resolution adopted in Strasbourg on the last plenary session called Polarization and Intensified of the Violence in the Serbia 1 year since collapse of the Novi Sad railway canopy down. Yeah. And I must say that it was, for me, I was chief negotiator for that resolution. It was easier than I thought because all pro-European political parties in the parliament, of course, agreed on the text within 2 hours. Even EPP, and EPP as a European People's Party, is a hub organization where President Vučić party is affiliated somehow, it's some kind of observer status. And even for them now, it's completely obvious that we need to react in order to send very clear message to the Belgrade that regime passed many red lines, especially since this mass protest broke not only in the Belgrade, Novi Sad, but all over the Serbia. Of course, now we were expecting a commission to declare themselves, and I'm pretty pleased that Marta Kos yesterday broke that chain of appeasement, I would say, of the regime in Belgrade with a number of clear assessment and statement. And she even warned leadership in Belgrade that if they carry on and continue this insulting manner, accusing the European Union for financing or supporting so-called color revolution in the Serbia, they may expect some kind of reaction coming from the Brussels. I would like to see that, first of all, because it's not only Serbia we are talking about. Serbia is the single most influential country on the Western Balkans, thanks to its size, number of the population, and geographical position. When we talk about enlargement policy as such, we need to take into account some other countries, Serbian neighbors like Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Kosovo, for example. And government in Belgrade got a leverage. They can produce crisis there or to cause a different type of turmoils in all those countries in a way. So I said yesterday even to Madam Marta Kos that we need to take care and we need to be very, very precise when talk about the Serbia, because it's not only Serbia but enlargement policy as such. We in the European Parliament, and I said in my speech last time in Strasbourg, this resolution is not against the Serbia. Nothing is far from the truth. But we try to put our analysis and we try to base our assessment only on the facts and trying to send proper message to the country who might one day be member of the European Parliament, but now it's at the best standstill. Or in many chapters, we saw, I didn't check it in detail, but it's even lagging behind in this report. In the many areas and a lot of indicators for the country's progress or not, I think in many cases the description was moderate progress or no progress at all. So if the government in the Belgrade want to fit and match its promises, it must completely change the course. And the question is, how? Because I don't think that Mr. Vučić is sincere when we talk about Serbia in the EU membership. I don't believe him, because he's doing everything to keep a distance between Belgrade and Brussels for the years. What he's interested in is funding. It's money, European means, because European Union is the most important economic partner of the Serbia. more than 60% of exchange of the goods. Of course, it's between European Union and Serbia. European Union is a donor and investor, you can name it. And it's my favorite example. Many years ago, I read that a tiny member of the European Union, Austria, for example, is investing in Serbia almost like Russia. So it's a lot of falsificate here, failed political attitudes towards European Union when we talk about messages coming from Belgrade. But now European Union and Serbia are on a crossroad. We need to decide what to do with enlargement policy in the next couple of the years, and Serbia must decide how seriously it will treat possibility to join the European Union. And in a way, it's a bit discouraging to see this data that a number of the Serbian citizens, they don't feel warm about the European Union. I can't understand that there is a lack of the warmth regarding some other international organization, but European Union, I think it's a really serious problem. And for me, Serbia is a society in vortex. Serbian society is in turmoil, but 1 billion euro question is how to map way out of this trouble. And my question to my colleagues here, of course, it's a very valuable source of information, but I didn't see any slide regarding Serbian opposition. Because, of course, students' movement is the most dynamic societal movement, not only in Serbia, but in wider region for years ago. It's okay, but we don't know much about their intentions when talk about next coming elections, nevertheless, when they will take place. But we got opposition right now represented in the national parliament. They are legitimate in a way, but they are maybe on margin of the political life, and I would like to hear more. Is there any information about them and how to organize, let's say, political scene, or how political scene will be organized in the next, let's say, 6 months? That's it.
Thank you. I pick up Mr. Picula's question about the role of the opposition, and I will also add a question for both Raša and Nikola about your assessment to the enlargement report, because as Mr. Picula was saying, like in many of the key areas, the Commission reflect the limited progress of even backsliding in the media freedom, and I think that in some other chapters, in chapters 23, they reported that there was no progress at all. So I would like to hear whether you think that this year's Commission report, they show this change of tone. So whether you have seen this change of tone. The Commission was mentioning they recognize the difficult environment in which civil society operates. They also highlighted the insufficient political determination of Serbia's leadership to fulfill the EU requirements, and they also asked the Serbian leadership to change the rhetoric towards the EU. So I would like to ask you about your analysis. And then also, like, if you want to address the issue of what role for the Serbian opposition, the opposition parties, you can also do so. Maybe Raša, you can go first, and then Nikola, you can follow.
Thank you very much. I mean, the most important is that European Commission's report is factual, and it's reflecting the reality in Serbia, and that's the most important part for the Serbian people. I don't think that majority of Serbian people will be having the opportunity to understand because they won't be able to read or to be informed about the true content of the report because of the completely distorted media landscape. So basically, none of the key events in Brussels or in a Serbian EU accession process were not covered by the Serbian National Broadcast Service, neither by any of the national TV stations. So these things are non-events for majority of Serbian citizens who are primarily having the opportunity to inform themselves from the traditional media. On the other hand, we are really welcoming the change of the approach in communications from the key actors ambassadors being able to communicate to the Serbian public directly, so not through state institutions, not through official channels, but directly to Serbian citizens. We recently saw that newly appointed ambassador of European Union to Serbia directly addressed the disinformation against the European Union around the energy issues. Basically, that was conveyed by the pro-government media, but also by some high-level officials. And this is a change. This is something which is completely different to the previous experience that we saw, that in many situations, most of the reactions of the European institutions being present in Belgrade or in Brussels was like in the Twitter account, EU is concerned or gravely concerned, right? I'm not trying to make a joke out of it, but basically, usually that these were the only communications that were coming towards the Serbian citizens, nothing directly to address the issue. And now we are seeing this differently, of course, by Commissioner Kos as well, not only yesterday, but on several occasions. The fact that although sporadically and not that often and loudly as me as the activist would like to hear, we also had messages that confirmed that the requests from the students are the very same requests that the European Union is asking from the Serbian and any other candidate country. That's something which is extremely important. For us and for the state of democracy of Serbia is quite telling that the only positive things mentioned are one related to the potential adoption of the law on the unified voters registry and adoption potential of the members of the Council of a Regulatory Authority for Electronic Media. These are minor things. These are micronic things in terms of the scale of the problems that we are facing in Serbia. And yet these were the only two positive things. Law is not adopted. It will be adopted potentially this week, actually. If the law on voters registry is adopted, it doesn't mean that the audit of the voters registry will be implemented. It doesn't mean that the findings will be communicated to Serbian citizens, that the recommendations potential of the Commission will be enforced by relevant institutions like the Ministry of Public Administration or Ministry of Interior. And we saw in the past years everything from the side of the Serbian state not to do anything to implement the audit recommendations. In 2023 elections, audit was in Serbia observing with a full-fledged mission. A report followed. In that report, there is an assessment of a previous recommendations of audit missions in previous years. 4 out of 56 priority recommendations Serbian state implemented. And those 4 implemented are related to non-controversial things, meaning administration, meaning education of the voters. Nothing regarding to media, nothing regarding to pressure, intimidation, and different criminal activities of the political actors related to voters, nothing to abuse of the office, nothing to the abuse of the public finances of the campaign, nothing regarding to the media, nothing regarding the voters registry. So the biggest question is how Serbia is going to get out of this crisis. Personally, and as an organization, we believe that elections are the way out. We are aware that these elections will be held in an environment which is extremely divided, with a lot of tensions, and with no electoral improvements. But we cannot expect from the government that neglected all of the audit recommendations, all of the pressure of the European Union yielded only by a promise to adopt the law. And we are great in adopting the laws, but not in implementing them. And shortly about the opposition, obviously we have a huge crisis of the political organizing, not only in Serbia, globally. There is huge distrust in political organizations. That also goes with the ruling political parties and the opposition political parties. Ruling political parties are distancing themselves from, for example, Vučić is distancing himself from SNS, Serbian Progressive Party, by forming this movement for people and statehood, right? I think that I translated it well. Vučić launched, if I'm not wrong, in the past couple of years, 10 times this movement, because he's trying to make attraction among the people that this is the new entity that they will be supporting. So because he's aware of how the perception of citizens about the corruption and who is corrupted, those local branches of SNS people around Serbia. So even there is a problem. And for the opposition, yes, there is a huge distrust. We even measured that once the opposition parties are supporting students, support to students drops. That's how huge distrust in opposition are. Of course, yet there are a couple of % of people who are still more likely going to vote for the opposition parties rather than some unknown entity of mythical creatures, that how we are calling students. But of course, we are not seeing any single move on the side of the political parties to start rebuilding that kind of trust. We didn't have a single leader of political parties resigning after bad decisions made around the 2023 elections, because there was a huge message from Serbian citizens: unite. They formally united, but the campaign was as vague as possible, as late as possible, as without imagination as possible. And then the first moment when they divided among themselves was the decision whether to boycott or not Belgrade election a couple of months later. And that was where Serbian citizens who were traditionally supporting several opposition parties decided to say no. So the only desperate situation is that high that the only support goes to the students, because they see that they are not corrupted, they are not having an agenda which is negatively perceived. And yes, of course, this is a huge risk because of the policy development, because of the structure to take over the government, which means a completely new process that we are about to see in future. And this is our task for the different stakeholders in society to start working on them.
Thank you. I will maybe give the floor first to Jelena, since she hasn't had the chance to speak yet. Thank you, Jelena, for being here. I'm very happy that you managed. I already informed that you were trapped because of the drone situation last night. I already introduced you at the start, but just to remind the audience, you're a senior research associate at the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory at the University of Belgrade and a BiEPAG member. I just, right before you arrive, I just launched the question, or I ask colleagues about their assessment of the Commission's country report on Serbia. Given that you, Nikola, and also Marina are currently working on a policy brief on the EU response to Serbia, maybe you can also start your intervention explaining a little bit like what is your assessment of the EU's reaction, and also your assessment of the Commission's enlargement package.
Thank you, and terribly sorry I'm late at this dramatic entrance. I'm sorry for that. I don't know what has been discussed so far, so I don't want to maybe repeat some points. But yeah, I've read the report, not in its entirety. I've read it, and yes, we are all pleased to hear some harsher voices. Maybe they're still not that as harsh as we would like them to be. And you have to understand, I speak from the point, I am a BiEPAG member, I'm writing a policy paper, but also I'm a member of academic community in Serbia, and I inevitably speak from that point as well. And there's this big frustration, not only within academic community, but also among civil society, I would say as well, that, all these harsh reactions are coming and they are to the point, but the frustration comes because what this regime is doing, it has been doing. It was the same a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Okay, police brutality is maybe a different moment now, but the techniques and methods of institutional capture, control of media, intimidation, not to mention electoral frauds, this has all been the same, and the rhetoric has been very different. From 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had, our friend Vučić is doing great. It's not only words, it's deeds as well, if I'm quoting correctly Ursula von der Leyen. So it's, that's been, you can notice the shift, but we don't notice the shift. It's been the same. We've been living through this. So this is where the frustration comes. And time is so much important. Time is very important. It's crucial. Yeah, it's good that we're hearing these messages now, but we're losing time. And I think one of the messages that we want to convey with our policy paper is that we cannot afford to lose any more time. We have to be, because it's really it's drastic what is going on in Serbia at the moment, and I think that also because of that lost time, we also lost trust. So I would say the trust and time are two most important factors here. I work with students as well. I also teach at Belgrade. I have contacts with many of students and many academic community, and I'm very saddened to see how the distrust in the EU is growing. And I mean, it's always been there, and it's there for many reasons. Of course, the control of media and media discourses and narratives are one thing, but also the EU stance towards EU plays a role. And now I think that this is deepening and growing. And I would say that the regime is actively playing on it. It's very actively playing on it, and it's building it and wants to make it larger and to be an important factor in the student movement as well. And I would like to see that trust diminished. So I think it's very important to reach out to all the democratic and democratizing agents in Serbia. I think it's of crucial importance to reach out to civil society actors, to all those working in bottom-up, informal civil sector of civil society. It's very important to work with academic communities, because I think that we have very good resources, we have very good social capital, if you like to call it that way. I think it's important to strengthen those voices, to make them work together, to work on connections with them, and not to lose more time, and to try to work on rebuilding trust. I will stop here if that's okay, because I really don't know what you've covered so far, so I don't want to maybe...
Thank you. I will now give you the floor, Nikola. After that, I will open the floor for questions from the audience. So if you have questions, the time is coming now.
Thank you. Just to try to answer very briefly your question, actually Tonino's question about the opposition. As Raša rightfully said, this anti-political, let's say, trend is actually global, not only Serbian, but in Serbia there's an added value that, the added element that the Serbian government has really did its best to destroy politics as a notion in this country, that country. Basically, there is this kind of idea that politics is dirty, that being a politician is dirty, that nobody should be trusted, and that President Vučić is the only one who's actually somehow above it, because he's not presented as a politician, but as a statesman. If you look at the number of hours he's on TV, he's an institution by himself. He doesn't suffer from the consequences of this anti-political movement, right? Because he's somehow above politics. And even if the citizens believe that everybody is dirty in politics, this still doesn't affect him, because his voters, his supporters see something much more in him than just a politician. As a consequence, even his own party is trying to destroy itself. Is trying to literally destroy the party which won all elections on all levels for the past 13 years, and to shift into this movement for the state. People's movement for the state, I believe, is the right term, because they want to build this whole movement around the personality of President Vučić and not have it associated with any political party or anyone besides him. And of course, this is one part of the explanation. The other part is that institutions were pretty much destroyed in a way. The trust in institutions have been destroyed in the past 10 years, which means that there is no trust in the electoral process. There is this idea that taking part in elections, taking part in politics, taking part in the parliament actually is in a way collaboration with the government, because the whole process just cannot end in any changes. They cannot result in change of the government. In parliament, you don't really have opportunity to change anything. So basically, there is this impression had by a large part of the public that all opposition parties who are in any way involved in political processes are actually compromising with the government by doing so. I don't agree with this personally, but we have to accept this is how a large part of the population sees it. And this is the consequence of why the opposition actually doesn't profit from all of this. Because right now, this is a movement for justice and rule of law and democracy, which is trying to wash away the entire political scene and all of these, dirty or really dirty politicians and institutions which did not deliver in the past. And this is, I would say, a much more fundamental challenge that we have right now, basically how to have all this energy and this demand for democracy, how to translate into concrete political action and to a concrete democratic position. This is going to be really hard for us in Serbia. Now to talk very briefly, as briefly as I can, about the policy brief that we are preparing, BiEPAG, my colleague Jelena, Vasiljević, and Maria Volović, and me. And it's about the EU's treatment of the current crisis, and basically the number one, I would say, message in that sense is that the EU should take the current crisis very seriously, because it is very serious, and business as usual just doesn't work anymore. There are three points or areas where we want to basically convey a couple of messages. The first is when it comes to EU accession. So the EU has to very clearly link democracy to EU accession of Serbia, but not by encouraging individual reforms which by themselves would not really change anything meaningfully, but having a holistic approach on how democracy in Serbia functions, and then making sure that all of these changes actually do bring some results. This has been severely lacking in the past, where the EU was quite happy to support and to encourage reforms which were superficial, cosmetic, or sometimes even detrimental to democracy in Serbia, having in mind all the other issues which the EU decided to ignore. There needs to be more pressure on the Serbian government to deliver on democracy by using, of course, the conditionality within the EU accession, but also when it comes to funding and individual sanctions. This is something which simply needs to be on the table, because the situation, as I said before, is quite concerning, and there is still a possibility that it might go from even to worse than it is currently. When it comes to the communication, now this is something which is very important. In the past several years, besides the reports which always gave more or less clear picture of what the problems are, the communication of the high-level EU officials was almost exclusively positive about the Serbian government and its reforms. Especially the European Commission President was very encouraging of the reforms in Serbia, accentuating the friendship with her dear friend Vučić, and not only her, but also Donald Tusk in the past, and other officials were very, very vocal in their support, rhetorical support towards the government. And citizens of Serbia saw these messages, they saw this much more than they saw or read the reports or any other, documents that the EU has adopted or published. Basically, this communication has created this illusion that basically the European Union is in a way content with reforms in Serbia, and that gives more ammunition to the governments to claim that reforms are actually doing fine. And the reason why we're not making progress is because of Kosovo, foreign policy, or simply because they just hate Serbia. Civil society, of course, or because they just hate Serbia and don't want us to make progress. So the EU has to communicate quite clearly about the problems of Serbian democracy and not shy away from criticism, trying to not to anger the Serbian government too much. This whole idea in Serbia that is had by many citizens that the EU is supporting Vučić or even keeping him in power may be naive, but it exists. And it's a consequence of propaganda coming from the government, and also this communication from the EU, which was in the past, I would say, quite damaging to what its goals are. I have to comment here the changes we could see starting from April this year by Commissioner Kos, but also President Ursula von der Leyen. This actually brought results, not only in terms of the encouraging of pro-EU sentiment in Serbia, but also basically encouraging the citizens, encouraging the society to see the EU as an ally for the first time after several years. This is something which I believe is quite important. When it comes to the the third issue, and this is maybe the most complicated one, and this is the issue to other pro-democratic actors, because as we all know, the European Union mainly deals and discusses with the governments. Well, this is the main interlocutor. In Serbia, the Serbian government has been the main interlocutor of various institutions in the past, and it is of course tricky then to look beyond the government to find new interlocutors. But especially in Serbia now, with all this complex situation that we discussed here. But nevertheless, it needs to happen. The pro-EU opposition, which we talked about here before, may not be the dominant actor right now in Serbian politics, maybe not even in this anti-government front, but they still have a very important role to play and will have an important role to play in the future. So engaging with the pro-EU opposition in Serbia is very important. I also have to commend here the decision by different EU high-level officials to meet with the opposition in Serbia for the first time, actually ever, and to hear what they have to say, to open these lines of communication as well. Because this not only encourages or strengthens these actors which you actually did talk to, in a way even protect them from the attacks by the government, but also encourages them to engage further with the EU and EU institutions. The European Parliament has done wonders in the last several years when it comes to the clarity of its communication, the contacts that the European Parliament groups had with their Serbian counterparts, and all of this has encouraged much more activity towards Brussels by the EU parties and then also by the media and the public, who now is looking at Brussels every time there's a discussion on Serbia, every time there is a resolution on Serbia. This is now something which is seen as important for the whole society. It wasn't the case. Wasn't the case before. Now, of course, when it comes to the students, we'll know that they're in a way unreachable. They don't really engage in any discussions with any governments, including the government of the EU or any, let's say, political actors in the EU. But nevertheless, there are other ways how the EU can aim to approach the students. There is, of course, the academic community, which is a very important actor as well, in a way pretty much connected with the student movement. There is also going to be the student list, which is going to be at some point published and probably take part in the next elections. And this list will have individuals that could be talked with. But I believe that the most important thing that needs to happen there is a complete change of strategy, that the EU should stop only looking at what actors are there and who to talk to, but keep in mind that what's important is that future actors who do appear are going to look at the EU as a potential ally. This is something which is very important, because currently the situation in Serbia is quite complex. We don't know what's going to happen, after the elections, or even in the meantime, in terms of how the list will look like, who will be in a coalition, whether some new actors will appear, whether some existing actors would merge, some would disappear. We still don't know. And the approach of just looking at the political situation currently in Serbia and saying, okay, there is an interlocutor now, so let's just not talk to anyone, it's a wrong strategy. There needs to be a strategy to make sure that whoever new political actor actually appears is going to look at the EU as an ally. And what we have seen so far in the past several weeks or even months, with a change of communication, with more engagement by the European Parliament, with, I would say, an idea held by a large part of Serbian society that the EU has finally awoken and finally looks at Vučić as a problem. This is what enables and makes sure that in the future, the actors, both those who are already there and those who are yet to appear, are going to see the EU as a potential ally. This not only helps democracy in Serbia, but also helps the EU's own influence currently and in the future.
Thank you, Nikola. I would now open the floor for questions from the audience, if there are any.
Thank you. I'm Augustin Palokaj, a journalist working here for 28 years. I have two questions. One question for Mr. Picula. After all insults by everybody from the government, but also from the opposition in Serbia, how are you managing to do your work as rapporteur for Serbia? And do you have support from the Commission? And from the colleagues from Serbia, I don't agree that the EU sees Vučić as a problem. They still see him as a solution, as the best, if not the only interlocutor that counts. EU doesn't have strategy. They maybe they don't like if one person is the only institution. You said that Vučić is the only institution in Serbia, and they prefer that because it's easy to discuss with him. I mean, many times I asked for reactions on his statements, and well, we don't care. He said that on the media. What it counts is what he told us. And so, what did he say to you? Well, he said exactly what we wanted to hear. He was right yesterday saying that I have full understanding and respect from President Ursula von der Leyen and from President Costa. So he has a support by two most powerful people in the European Union. Why? That's a question for Serbia and also for EU. Because many people say when we speak about the problems that are important for European Union, situation in Serbia is important because there is repression and brutality. Otherwise, it's not that important for you. It's domestic for Serbia. It's for you to settle. What they are interested in is relations of Serbia with Kosovo, impact in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Montenegro, relations with Russia, and position towards EU. On those 5 issues, they say that the opposition is with many illusions. Vučić is very pragmatic. We don't know why there are no EU flags in the protests. I mean, they are right not to have because EU supports Vučić. But is it maybe because they are more pro-Russian and pro-Chinese? Because percentage of people in Serbia that trust Russia more than they trust EU, it's much higher than support from SNS. So basically, I would like to hear from you what is, if it's difficult to identify who speaks on behalf of the protesters, but in some meetings, as my colleague, one of my Serbian colleagues put it, one of the meetings, the speeches were looked like a debate in pink television more than like opposition to Vučić. So I would like to hear, is there a force in Serbia that could have a clear opinion on what it counts for European Union? Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if there's another question, otherwise, no? Okay. Then we can move to the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Palokaj, for the question. Of course, my job as a standing rapporteur on behalf of the European Parliament for relations with Serbia is to guide and guard. First of all, to guard and protect integrity of the process of assessment of the country. So I'll try to make no compromise when talk about confrontation or conversation with the different interlocutors from the Serbia, no matter whether they are from the government side or opposition. There is no compromise with that. You must be clear in your stances. And it's a very structured process. And I think everybody who's interested in can be informed about the process and get rid of any prejudices or whatever obstacles to the frank and the free conversation. I expected such a tsunami of accusations because I did my job in the previous mandate, the same job for the Montenegro. And of course, it's impossible to assess situation in Montenegro without taking into account influence coming from the Serbian government on the Montenegrin political scene, in a way. I'm ready to carry on my job, and of course, despite all kinds of the obstacles, and I'm glad that a part of the narrative used in the documents of the European Parliament, which I got privileged to work on, now we can find in the Commission report. This Commission report is not a copy and paste text of last resolution adopted in the Parliament, but you can see many precise and clear statement and factuality earlier reports on the Serbia, bad for the government equally in a way, now they are implemented. For example, that it's not easy to communicate with the politicians from Serbia type of the government. It's a last example. The other day I assessed the situation in the Serbia and I said that I'm worried, that I'm afraid. What you are afraid of? I'm afraid of the 17th victim because we all know that 60 innocent people died 1 year ago under the canopy collapsed in the railway station in Novi Sad. And I'm afraid of the 7th victim because I'm afraid that these clashes on the Belgrade street could result in more victims because it becomes more and more violent in a way. And of course, notorious informer tabloid put me on the cover page today, my picture and the title that I'm asking for the more blood in the Serbia. Of course, what to do? To sue that people. In a way, we know that judiciary in the Serbia is a joke for the most of the cases in a way. So I'm carry on, and I'll put my fingers together with my colleagues on the all bad developments in the Serbia, all kind of the bottlenecks. Of course, there's a lot of them, because with one permanent goal, to try to make situation better, to push Serbia towards European Union if it's possible. But there is no free ride, no for Serbia, no for Kosovo, no for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, who is leading, and I'm very happy about Albania as well. It's a very structured process, and if we want to keep our face serious, and if I want to keep integrity of the process, we need to be equally serious to everybody in process. And unfortunately, Serbia is an important country, but it's lagging behind. And my job is, if I can, to correct situation on better.
Maybe, Jelena, if you want to react, since you are the one who has spoken the least.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what you've mentioned is also part of a big problem we always discuss in Serbia, and that is, first of all, like, Vučić is the guy you can talk to. Like, if you want an alternative, who do you talk to? You don't have a face, you don't have a movement. The opposition is not that strong. They're not relevant enough to talk to them. So that was always the problem. And now the student movement is also not developing in that form of setting up an organization and, providing a visible face. And again, you don't have someone to talk to. But first, let me start with a brief introductory note on the student movement and how they stand on EU values and whether they support Russia or not. So colleagues of mine from the Faculty of Political Sciences have conducted a research in April, May with a representative sample of very active student population. So that was the time when the student movement was in full sway. And the results of they asked a lot of questions, but we also could see that actually they are way more pro-EU and pro-Western, that there are some pro-Russian sentiments, and actually how they position themselves is not representative of the general sample, how you generally feel, how you generally have in the total population. So it's like, for example, we know that now general support for joining the EU has fallen even under 40%, but among that active student population, it was much, much higher. So it's not that, I think that you have a democratic potential in the student movement, definitely. But the problem is how young people perceive EU communication and dialogue with Serbia, and what they see is important. You also said yourself that what matters to EU is basically transactional relations, geopolitical stances, and how you position yourself toward Russia, Ukraine. So you can have, for your domestic purposes, you can say whatever you want about Russia, but as long as you are with us on crucial aspects, you're fine. We want someone not to provoke a conflict in the region. Although Vučić's role in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Kosovo is not really a positive one, so it's a questionable whether he is really the guy who can guarantee stability in that respect. But the EU knows that in any way he's the one who has a control over it. So I think they prefer that than a situation in which you don't know who has a control over it. But it's very far from a scenario in which Vučić has a benevolent or a positive role in the region. But geopolitics matters, interest matters. Individual EU countries have various financial interests, and that is what is most important. Obviously, rule of law is not important because Vučić is not delivering. Fair and free elections are not important. Political accountability is not important for him, whereas we've seen that for the student movements, these things are important. So now we can say it's a naive thing to look at. Do you really believe that EU is about values? It is. I believe it is, and I believe that, yes, in the EU, it's not. We should not only look at bad the prospects of future enlargement only in geopolitical and transactional terms. I think that it is very important to look at all these values, and it's obviously that there is a democratic potential to engender some new actors, social and political actors that deeply care about the same values that are fundamental for the EU: rule of law, accountability, fair and free elections. And I think that, but the problem is, of course, the lack of clear political articulation and the absence of concrete actors. And I think that this is because we've lost, as I already said, we lost a lot of time, and I think we've missed a lot of opportunities, but I think that at least we have to recognize this situation as it is. And I think that we should really, and I really believe that EU should abandon this idea that Vučić is still the guy who we should talk to, because he still stands, he holds the right positions on the matters that are important to us, because we should acknowledge that it's not really looking good, it's not promising, and many of these positions are very volatile, and that also all of these things are very interconnected. As Nikola said, a holistic approach to this, to democracy in Serbia is very much important, because you cannot really have you cannot destabilize completely media or completely ban freedom of speech and have such strong pressures on civil society and academia and still hope for some good results on some other camps. All these things are so interconnected, and I think that we're just leaving more maneuvering space for Vučić to then reheat some other narratives, pro-Russian, pro-Chinese narratives, and to also then have some new political actors that will emerge from that field, you know. So I think that time is, again, a very important factor, and we should take things seriously and understand that, yes, there are some political factors and actors. They're not big enough. Maybe they're not still in a position to be taken. Not really in a position to be taken as they're not a position that can, they're not oppositional actors in terms like in the way we had in the 2000 after ousting Milošević. So not that we have clear actors that can make a regime change, but we do have some potential, and I think that if we nurture that and if we talk to that, it can only grow.
Thank you, Jelena. It's already 3:30, so we are running out of time. I would just like to give you, Nikola and Raša, the floor for a last statement, but it has to be very, very short because it's already 3:31, actually. So the floor is over for a last message.
3 sentences. I'll try to make them really 3 sentences. When it comes to stabilitocracy, right? So stabilitocracy is about, well, first of all, encouraging stability, and the second, that there is actually no EU integration on the table. Right now, Vučić is not really delivering stability. There is no stability in Serbia whatsoever. And the second thing, EU integration is once again on the table. So for right now, the favorite statesman in the Western Balkans for the EU is Edi Rama, not Vučić anymore. I think this is a very significant change which happened in the past 3 years. And about the pro-EU political actor. The thing is that what we have now in Serbia is a very wide social movement which includes people from all ideological positions, and it is very hard to really see right now where this is all going in terms of whether there'll be a very crystal clear pro-European movement or not. But right now, this is a moment where democracy is the key point and the topic around which everything revolves, and this is going to be in the focus, I believe, in the next year as well.
Thank you.
Sorry,
and
I just want to ask that my colleague wants to just
but I hope
really short conclusion, because always we heard just the conclusions from one side. So
but I open the floor for very, very briefly, please, because I opened the floor already for questions and you didn't raise the hand. Do we have the mic? You can go ahead very briefly, please.
Thank you. Unfortunately, no representatives of the government were invited to take the floor as speakers today, so I hope I can contribute a few brief observations. First of all, I would like to thank you for this discussion. I think it's important that we can all talk openly, even when we don't agree on everything. I was listening carefully to everything that has been said today by your distinguished speakers. And I think it's important to underline, especially since Mr. Picula expressed some serious concerns, that Serbia's path to the EU definitely remains a clear and strategic choice, and that is what the President reiterated on so many occasions, including yesterday during the Euronews Enlargement Summit, also during his meeting with President Costa. Yesterday, that was a very successful one. You mentioned that the report of the European Commission is very harsh, that there is some change, shift in the narrative by the Commissioner, etc. I think that we should not forget the fact that the European Commission in its last report once again recommended opening of Cluster 3. So this is not our document, this is document of the European Commission. It means that there definitely has been some progress. Also, we were commended for progress when it comes to economy, financial stability, etc. Of course, there are areas that need to be improved, and we are very well aware of it. We will keep working on them together with our EU partners, and I hope civil society organizations, opposition, and everyone, because this is a mutual project, and we all have to be involved in it. I think Ms. Vasiljević mentioned the problem reaching of trust, etc. Breaching of trust, I would agree with you that there is definitely mistrust, polarization in the society, and this is a problem, one of the problems that is hindering us and slowing us down on our EU path, on fulfilling reforms, and we all have to work in order to overcome these problems and to overcome the challenges that we are facing. Also, the police brutality was mentioned. I would like to remind you that while the demonstrations were peaceful, the police did not intervene. Once the demonstrations became very violent and sorry, no, it's not propaganda, it's the facts. Let me finish, please. I don't interrupt you. So once the demonstrations became violent, the police had to intervene because, let me remind you again, that the state has a dual responsibility. One is to protect the public safety, and the other one, of course, to protect the right to peaceful assembly.
Okay.
One more thing, I'm sorry. Sorry, very important, because Mr. Picula mentioned that, if I understood correctly, there is a possibility, a risk actually, that the Belgrade could cause turmoil in some neighboring countries. I'm not sure what he precisely meant by that, but I think this is a very dangerous statement, and we should be very responsible when saying such things, and let us not add fuel to the fire, please.
Thank you so much. Exactly. I'm going to give you the floor, and we are going to close it after you. Thank you.
I wanted to conclude on a positive note. We are seeing a transformation in Serbia. Students brought a tide that is going to sooner or later decrust, capture the institutions. People who are supposed to be public servants, they're serving the interests of political parties. And this is the paradigm that students changed, unfortunately, due to the tragedy. And this is something which is unstoppable. And this is, Nikola mentioned, it's not the business as usual. And I think that whoever wants to support Serbian citizens to live in democracy as part of EU has to follow, for example, the signal of Sweden that just 2 days ago send a message that they are stopping working with the government that is a symbol of corruption, with no separation of power, but to start working directly with groups of citizens trying to build democracy in Serbia. And that's the way how other member states and the European Union should lead in the future. Thank you for coming.
Before we dismiss this excellent meeting and panel, I would like to reply to the colleague with one word when we mentioned a capability of the exporting crisis in neighboring country. Just one word, Banjska. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you for staying here 10 minutes longer. I hope that you can join me in an applause for the panelists. And at the EPC, we are going to continue working on these topics. And I would like to say that on Friday we are going to have Director General for DG NS Koopman to present the enlargement report. Thank you so much.
Thank you.